Savarese, Executive Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. I thank all of you for being on the NFHS Network and WOTM today as we address our return to school beginning June 11th for summer activities. You can see at the bottom of the screen there's a number that you can text questions that you have any time during this presentation, and we'll do our best to answer those questions at some time during the show, but for sure, as many as possible within the final 15 minutes of this presentation. Before I begin, I want to wish you and your family the best of health. I pray all of you are well and have been able to stay away from the COVID-19 virus. As we return to our schools June the 1st, our goal should be to follow all Department of Public Health guidelines, AHSAA best practices, and NFHS recommendations as students re-enter activities. Remember, the actions that you take in being preventable, in trying to prevent the virus will not eliminate the risk, but following these guidelines will mitigate the risk. And that should be our goal, is to mitigate the risk, not only for your students, but for you, the coach, you, the administrator, and anyone else associated with your program. It's a lot easier for us to open our schools than it will be to stay open. But we can stay open, and I'm counting on each of you, administrators, coaches, and support staff, and your leadership by following the Alabama Department of Public Health guidelines. And if we do this, hopefully we'll be able to have a normal fall season. But again, your leadership is vital as we make every attempt to provide the safest environment under the current health guidelines. When I coached, and that was just a few years ago, I understood that some of our students did not have a set of parents, or sometimes even one parent in their life. But there was absolutely no reason they couldn't have a good teacher, coach, role model in their lives. Today, as we return to participation, your leadership has never been more vital than it is currently. Collectively, how we practice and adhere to Alabama Department of Public Health guidelines, our suggested best practices over the next 2 months will determine competition possibilities. I want to say this to you. There are really 3 keys. 1, maintain physical distancing at all times. That's a 6-foot circumference around every child. Clean, clean, clean. Clean equipment before use, clean equipment after use, wash hands, do all the cleanliness that you can possibly do. And last one, and maybe the most as important as any of them, is to wear face coverings. And I have a face covering in my hand, and this face covering is the one my wife made for me that I wear anytime that I'm out in public or within 6 feet. And this face covering, anytime you as a coach are around the kids, you should have a face covering. Or you should have your students, anytime they're within 6 feet, to wear that face covering. So I encourage you to do that. Remember, it's not only protecting the students, but it's protecting you, the coach, as you go through this process. Now, I also want to encourage you as we start next Monday to remember it's not about winning championships on Monday. It's about how to learn to live with the virus in an athletic, educational environment. I encourage you to slowly acclimate your students to these Department of Public Health guidelines. Not come in the first day and see how much a player could lift again, but to teach them how to acclimate themselves to these guidelines. And remember, don't ever let us forget, heat acclimatization is very important as we begin. Remember to hydrate your kids, But when you hydrate them, they all should have their own water bottles, and encourage them to bring those, because hydration is very important as you condition your students outside. I also encourage you to be patient, understanding, and flexible. We are not back to normal. This is not a normal activity. It's going to take you longer to do what you want to do, and you are learning a different way and teaching a different way to do it. We also encourage you to accommodate the students who are uncomfortable with returning. There are parents who are not ready to let their kids return to school. As you know, summer workouts are not mandatory or under the jurisdiction of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, under jurisdiction of the local school. Please do not hold against any child the time that they miss during a workout because mom and dad weren't ready for their kids to return. All the best practices that we're about to go over with you today are the result of 3 committees, the summer, fall, and football committees, as well as our medical advisory board. I'm very grateful for their input as we return to our scholastic environments. Moreover, I'd like to thank Dr. Eric Mackey, the Alabama State Superintendent of Education, along with the Associate Director, Mr. Terry Roller, for their leadership during this unprecedented health crisis. We are blessed to have great state leadership and for the Alabama High School Athletic Association to be aligned with those wonderful individuals. Also, we will have another conference similar to this, or another program, July the 7th. We will provide you an update prior to getting ready to return to, hopefully, what will be a normal fall season. So again, let me give you a quick overview of what we'll do today. First, a reminder that we can begin summer workouts on June 1st. Number 2, our main objective is to educate coaches and student athletes how to safely live with COVID-19 and to follow all Department of Public Health guidelines. Our mission as an association is to develop our student athletes safely, physically, and mentally as we go through this crisis. We will maintain a static environment. A static environment being we will not play other schools during the summer. First, we're going to learn to live with the virus. Second, we're going to get our kids physically healthy before we get ready to compete again. And lastly, hopefully, we'll be able to continue a normal fall schedule beginning July 27th. We will continue to look at current data. We'll communicate with the Alabama Department of Public Health, the State Department of Education, CDC, and other agencies to update you when and if they are necessary. It is my privilege at this time to introduce Dr. Jimmy Robinson, who is the Medical Director for the Alabama High School Athletic Association Medical Advisory Board, to discuss general guidelines and best practices as we return Monday, June 1st. He will remain online and be with us for the entire program. So if you have additional questions, please text them to the number listed below, and we will ask Dr. Robinson those questions. I want to say this, Dr. Robinson, he knows how we all feel about him here, but we couldn't be blessed to have a more dedicated professional leading the AHSAA Medical Advisory Board for over 20 years. He serves on numerous boards all across the country and is an expert in, especially for us, in all health-related issues. So Dr. Robinson, we're blessed to have you. Thank you for being with us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Coach Savarese. I appreciate that, and welcome to all the viewers and coaches. Just wanted to go over the guidelines. These guidelines that we developed were a combination of the Alabama Department of Public Health and the CDC and other best practices, including the NCAA. And we came up with these guidelines that are not supposed to be restrictive, but hopefully just informative. So I'm going to go through each of these, and we broke them down into different segments, and hopefully we can explain these and then have time for questions at the end. So the first and most important part when we get started is the education. The most important thing is you need to know what the local and state guidelines are. Where are we as a state? Is everything open? Are we all go? Or have they given us restrictions on a limiting number of people in areas that we can be in? We need to educate everybody on all the seriousness of this disease, especially for people who are at high risk, including the elderly and people with other chronic medical problems, and know how to recognize the signs and symptoms. The next section deals with screening, and screening is really important to try to identify anybody that has signs or symptoms before they enter your facility. We suggest that anybody that feels sick or is sick, don't even come to start off with. But once they start coming to your facility, then we're going to want to screen daily with both taking the temperature and with the symptom checklist. The symptom checklist can be found on the Alabama High School Athletic Association's website. And those symptoms include a temperature greater than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit now or in the last 14 days. We want to know whether you've had contact with a person with known or suspected case of COVID. And by contact, direct contact, we mean anybody that's been within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes. The other symptoms include cough, shortness of breath, shaking chills, muscle aches, headache, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, sore throat, or a sudden loss of taste or smell. The other thing is that we don't want anybody else at the facility that doesn't need to be there. So only necessary personnel, non-essential personnel such as family members, friends, these kind of things should not be allowed in your facility. We try to minimize the number of people that are around. If any athlete has found to have symptoms on their symptom checklist, then we want them to check with their healthcare provider and make sure that they do not have the illness. The next thing is social distancing. We've been hearing a lot about that in the news. And social distancing means that you want to have a space of at least 6 feet in all directions, so 36 square feet around you. So when we talk about maintaining social distancing, we're talking about having 6 feet between each person. And when we talk about the number of people that we have in an area, is you can have as many as you possibly can as long as they maintain this 6 foot distancing, so 36 feet around where they are. We should have at least one adult for every 12 athletes that are or people that are in the group. And face coverings should be used when they're going to be closer than 6 feet together. We want small groups of individuals and have those groups not exchange with each other. So no interchange between the groups. And that's to minimize the possibility of if one student becomes sick, then he hasn't been exposed to all other team members, just been exposed to that one group. We want to try to keep teams separate. So if you've got several teams going on, for instance, on the basketball court, it might be volleyball players, these kind of things, then we want them separate also. The next thing is facial coverings. Face coverings are one thing that we think really may mitigate the spread of this virus from one person to the other. The face coverings do not protect you from other people. It protects other people from you. And that's because as we speak or cough or sneeze, the respiratory droplets are being expelled out into the air, and we don't want those landing on various surfaces or on other people. The face masks can be simple cloth coverings made out of a t-shirt. They can be surgical masks, respirators, or anything fancier. They're not necessary, and they are in short supply. We don't want face shields, so no plastic face shields that cover the face. So nothing like that should be put inside the helmet or used otherwise. If athletes are within 6 feet or can't be further than 6 feet away, we want face coverings on everybody. This might come in handy when athletes are lifting weights and they're spotters. We want to wear masks to protect the athlete while he's lifting weights. The next section is on hygiene. And hygiene is probably the most important thing that we know of that can really slow down the spread of this virus. And that means frequent hand washing, and that's with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available for your athletes, then hand sanitizer with a 60% alcohol, at least 60% alcohol base, is necessary. And the more they use this, the better, especially in between different equipment use, especially balls or using weights, these kind of things. Then you want to use the hand sanitizer on a regular basis. And the hand sanitizer should be readily available in stations or sitting around on counters, these kind of things. Equipment should be cleaned between uses. And this means that if you're using weights, then after an athlete uses a set of weights and finishes his workout, then the bench and then the bar should be cleaned after that. If they're using balls, we want to minimize the use of balls between athletes. And so most of the time we try to keep the athlete with just one ball, and then that ball should be cleaned between using it with somebody else. We want to make sure that the athletes leave and go home, directly home, and not hang around, and that they wash their clothes and take a shower at home and not hang around in the gym areas. All surfaces should be cleaned regularly, and this includes countertops, door handles, faucet handles. These kind of things should be cleaned on a regular basis. We have recommendations of up to at least once an hour, but it can be done just several times a day, just to make sure that decrease the possible virus spread. And again, all surfaces and weight equipment should be cleaned after use. Balls is always a question of can we use equipment, sport balls and these kind of things? And the answer is yes. Obviously, you can't eliminate all risk when you return to sports. We're just trying to minimize it. So we just have to be smart and do the things that we know will help lessen the exposure. So by cleaning the balls between use, or using only just one set of balls, or practicing drills without equipment might be the best thing to do. We also want to remember that these athletes have not been doing much exercise in all likelihood for the last 3 months. And so when they return to activity, we know that athletes are going to take about 4 weeks to get in proper shape to compete. So we've got to slow down this and start off with a slow pace and get them heat acclimated, get their cardiorespiratory system in shape, and do this on a slow progressive form. So maybe at least 50% of a workout for the first week or so, and then progressively increasing after that. So those are our general guidelines. I'll be around to answer any questions, specific questions. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson, and we always appreciate you being part of our program and all your service to our member schools. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce Alvin Briggs. Alvin Briggs is the Associate Executive Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. He will discuss some frequently asked questions. Again, don't forget to text us your questions to the number on the bottom of the screen. If you're having any trouble hearing the audio from this program, please go to WOTM.TV, WOTM.TV, and you'll be able to hear the audio and watch it on your computer screen or on any device. So, Alvin, at this time, if you'll go over frequently asked questions.
I can start now. Thank you, Coach Savarese, for having me on. We want to address these frequently asked questions that we have. First and foremost, you know, we need to make sure we follow all the guidelines set forth by the Alabama Department of Health and the Alabama State Department of Education, because that's very important. We need to understand that those guidelines are set forth for a reason. One of the first questions that we often get is, when do we start? You start June the 1st. Nothing starts before June the 1st. You should be ready to have meetings with parents and help them understand what's going on, what you're about to do, and along those lines before you even start any workouts or anything with your students. You should have them to understand. The reason for that is because there's 2 forms that needs to be signed right before you start anything. The one is consent form, that's already online, and you can find that linked on our website. And it should have been in the email that you got, email blast telling you about when we were coming back for return to school. The second one is the concussion form. It's important that we get those two forms signed and given back to the school before you start any activities with those students. And thirdly, we need to talk about the physical form. In the April board meeting, along with the medical advisory, the Central Board of Control extended all current physical forms through July the 27th. So if any student athlete's been participating during the 19-20 school year, that physical they had will extend through July the 27th. Any new student that comes out need to get a current physical form that's online and have that completed before they participate. So currently there's 3 forms along with including the physical form that needs to be addressed and given back to the school before any student compete against in conditioning. The next question that's asked is, who's responsible for implementing these guidelines? It's the local schools. I encourage you to get with your superintendent and your principal, your administration from your school to sit down and talk about how you're going to handle all these best practices that Dr. Robinson and Coach Savarese have been talking about this afternoon. It's incumbent that you understand that everybody's on the same page and y'all all doing the same thing to make sure that all the guidelines are followed to your superintendent and your principal's specificity. The next one, a question that's often asked is, do students need to wear a mask? We encourage you to have your students wear some kind of mask over their nose and mouth. This is important. We want to make sure, as Coach Savarese and Dr. Robinson have already mentioned, we want to make sure that we get to July the 27th. We want to be able to get to some normalcy. So if we're able to practice this and do the things we need to do, like set forth by the guidelines, I think we'll be able to get where we need to be during this time. A next question that's frequently asked, can multiple teams use a facility? Yes, they can. You have to practice the social distancing. You have to make sure those two teams don't cross paths and they stay in their particular groups. That's what the guidelines are asked for, and that's what we need to do, is make sure they don't cross paths. It's just important that we do that. Along those same lines, the next question is asked is the number of student athletes can be in a group. It's unlimited, but what the guidelines are set forth is saying that for every 12 students, you have 1 supervisor. And that's important because those supervisors can help those students maintain the social distancing. They can also help them maintain when they need to have the mask on and off. And they also can help them instruct them when they're doing the cleaning of the facilities. So it's important that you have a supervisor with those students to help them understand and teach them on what they need to do. So it's encouraging you to do those and follow those guidelines. And one of the last questions that's frequently asked is there summer competition? And the answer to that is no, there's no summer competition. The Central Board passed in April that there will be no summer competition. The State Department of Health has also advised that there be no competition just yet, so those are the guidelines we're going to follow. We will reevaluate that at some point, I'm sure, but right now we have no summer competition. If you have any text questions to ask about the frequently asked questions, use the numbers at the bottom of your screen, and we will get back to you during this broadcast on those frequently asked questions. Coach Savarese.
Thank you, Coach Briggs, and I appreciate you covering those questions. We're going to take just a short break, just about a minute, and then after the break, Jamie Lee, our director of the Alabama High School Athletic Directors and Coaches Association, will introduce 2 coaches who will explain to you some of the things that they are doing within their schools along with their administration to meet the Alabama Department of Public Health guidelines as we begin activity. We'll be right back.
Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24? It is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It is time we all start to talk more about youth suicide and how we can change these statistics. My name is Nick Saban, head football coach at the University of Alabama, and I'm working with the Jason Foundation and the AHSAA to address this serious national health issue. Visit jasonfoundation.com to learn what you can do to help prevent youth suicide.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel line.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Lee, and I'm the director of the Alabama High School Athletic Directors and Coaches Association. And I am very pleased to introduce two of our coaches to you today, two of our finer coaches. First of all, Coach Josh Niblett. He is the head football coach at Hoover High School. Josh has had a tremendous amount of success, won multiple state championships there at Hoover. And if you know anything about Coach Niblett, you know that he is very organized, he is very detailed, and he has a plan. And so we have asked Coach Niblett to join us today, and if he will, just to give us some input and some insight on what he and his staff are going to do when they return to play next week and return to workout. So Coach Niblett, we'll turn it over to you. If you will, just give us a little insight about what you and your staff is planning to do.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I think first of all is just making sure from a staff perspective that we all understand the regulations and the guidelines and the restrictions that, as far as moving forward. So we'll staff meet a couple of times. We'll virtual staff meet tomorrow morning just to talk about certain things that we actually talked about on the conference call this morning with the state. And then Sunday we'll have an in-person staff meeting where we'll talk about various things that could go on Monday and make sure that we're all straight on what's going on. I think the biggest thing is how you're going to start the day. So we've got everything kind of laid out in stages. So when our kids show up, we're going to have coaches at every checkpoint, whether it be, at an entrance that we're not using to the entrance that we are using, to make sure that people know how we want the traffic to flow. So we'll have a drop-off section. We'll have where our parkers, when our guys drive in, how they're going to get to the facility and how they're going to walk. So, that we'll do that first of all. And then, if we've got a kid that looks sick or we talk to their parents on drop-off, we're going to have some thermometers there so we can actually check temperatures because we want to make sure it's not just about the one child that's there, but it's about everybody that's involved. So we'll make sure we do a really good job there. Once we'll all start off on the field, every kid will have an allotted space to where there's 5 yards to their sides, there's 5 yards in front of them and 5 yards behind them. So when we start off with our activation or we're doing some kind of footwork or some kind of linear speed mechanics, whatever, everybody's going to go at the same time. So instead of being in lines, once we give a cadence, then everybody's working so they keep 5 yards around them at all times while they're doing their work. We'll try to work to get our groups in a little bit smaller groups when we work our speed mechanics, especially Monday, then our lateral mechanics on Tuesday. So that way, we can make sure we're practicing social distance. One thing I'll tell our coaches, make sure we're monitoring it, make sure we're instructing it, and make sure we pay attention to it as we go because we want our kids to understand the importance of it. Once we're done with our activation, once we're done with what we're doing on the field as far as our agility work or speed work, then we'll split up and our defense will go to the weight room and our offense will stay on the field. Every guy has a diagram that allots exactly at what period of the work that we're doing on the field, where they're designated, their area, how much space they got, where their buffer is, how the kids need to be split up. So we have all that set up for our coaches so they know what's going on. In the weight room, when we're doing the lifts, we're actually, the first couple of weeks, we're just doing circuit work. So, a kid will actually do 3 sets of a lift for a prescribed amount of time. Another guy will be doing another lift, and another guy will be doing another lift for that prescribed amount of time. Once that 3 sets is over with, then we'll wipe down the bar or the equipment in which that person used, and then they'll rotate to the next exercise, but they'll stay within their social distancing and within their spot so they don't intermingle with all the other groups. Once we're done in the weight room, then we'll sanitize the weight room. We'll allow it to sit anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. After we get it sanitized, the defense will walk down. They will enter a gate through the stadium to get to the turf. The offensive guys will leave the field, and they will exit through a separate gate so we don't intermingle. And then once we get up to we'll just kind of flip that, and everybody now that was in the weight room is now doing on the field work. Everybody that was on the field is now in the weight room. I think some of the specifics that we're doing, we're not wearing helmets the first couple of weeks, so we won't be doing any kind of pass scale or one-on-one. We might try to get some one-on-one in next week, but our biggest thing is getting our kids acclimated to what's going on. So, it's just as more important to me to make sure our kids understand the guidelines and the regulations as far as social distancing, when to have your mask on if you're less than 6 feet away, or you're in the weight room, or you're spotting the guy, how we keep hand sanitizer around. Our kids will bring their own water every day. And I think that's just the important stuff, is it's attention to detail. And I think it's got to be more about the social distancing and following the cautionary protocols to keep all of our kids healthy as it is about the football or the weightlifting or the conditioning. And so that's what we're working on right now. We're going to make sure that we do it the best we can, and we want to make sure that our kids understand the importance of what's going on.
Coach, thank you so much for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. As you all can tell, Coach Niblett has definitely got a plan, a great plan. At this time, we'll take another short break. When we come back, we'll have Coach Tim Miller from Hayes Green High School.
Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24? It is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It is time we all start to talk more about youth suicide and how we can change these statistics. My name is Nick Saban, head football coach at the University of Alabama, and I'm working with the Jason Foundation and the AHSAA to address this serious national health issue. Visit jasonfoundation.com to learn what you can do to help prevent youth suicide.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel line.
We're back, and again, I want to introduce another one of our state's finest coaches. Coach Tim Miller is the women's basketball coach at Hayes Green High School. Again, a state championship coach, has been several times and I've asked Coach Miller to share what he's planning on doing inside, what he's going to do in the gym, what he's going to do when he gets his girls back to workouts next Monday. Coach Miller, do you mind sharing with us now?
No, I sure don't. Appreciate you having me on, Jamie. Yeah, so first of all, this is real similar to when we had the flu hit our team a couple of years ago. You know, if we lost another player, we wouldn't have been able to play a game. So this is something that we've kind of been through as a program, and some of our parents, the older parents that that understand what's fixing to happen this upcoming week. You know, making all of our parents feel comfortable and our players feel comfortable coming back to school is our main priority. As long as the parents feel comfortable letting their child come to school, then we can get more done with that student athlete at school. Everyone will have to wear a mask when they come to school. When they get there, we are going to check temperature. We are going to provide them with some practice masks, along with all of my staff and the players will have to wear a mask. When we break for water, our principal has told us he's going to shut the water fountains down. So this is something new that we're going to have to do this year or this summer. We're going to provide a water station. That's what I got with my staff, and we come up with having a water station over there. We're going to have throwaway cups. I really didn't want them to bring stuff inside, so when they go over and get a cup of water, drink that water, what you want to drink, then throw it away. We also are wiping the equipment down before they come, during breaks, and after. We're cleaning locker rooms, we're cleaning seats, we're cleaning door handles, doorknobs, the walls. Anything we think they're going to touch, it's going to get cleaned and wiped. We're just over-sanitizing everything. And also, we're trying to stockpile now on masks and stockpile as much cleaning supplies as we can. Our school system told us they're going to provide us with as much sanitation as we need, but we're actually going to have more. And also, I spoke with our system AD. He's having a virtual meeting with all the head coaches on Monday to go through the guidelines that they would like to see, implemented in each one of our schools in Madison County. As far as next week goes, we're going to ease into it. I'll probably space them out and have one ball per player. I'm not going to mix the balls up the first few days. And we're trying to be creative with me and my staff as far as implementing drills that we don't want more than 2 people per ball, and then using that same ball per 2 players. But just being creative in your practice and being creative as far as trying to get some work done, but also understand the social distance and the cleanliness of what's going on.
Thank you, Coach Miller. We really appreciate everything you're doing. And after listening to Coach Niblett and Coach Miller, it just reaffirms what a wonderful job that our school officials do in protecting our student athletes. And I'm so proud of our coaches. Just an awesome job. We're going to take another short break. And after this break, we'll come back to discuss all the text questions that you've sent into the association. And we've got quite a few, and we'll go over as many as we can before the end of the program. Again, thank you, coaches, for an outstanding job.
Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24? It is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It is time we all start to talk more about youth suicide and how we can change these statistics. My name is Nick Saban, head football coach at the University of Alabama, and I'm working with the Jason Foundation and the AHSAA to address this serious national health issue. Visit jasonfoundation.com to learn what you can do to help prevent youth suicide.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel line.
Well, thank you and welcome back to our program today. At this time, we're going to discuss as many questions as we possibly can. I want to encourage you all to go to the AHSAA website, for a segment on frequently asked questions that many of the text messages that we've received. We've already answered those questions on our website, so I encourage you to go to our website. For those of you that want others to see this program, it will be available on our website tomorrow. So just click on AHSAA.com and this program will be on the front page. We'll have a link to this program and you can share this with your school officials. We've had a lot of questions. One of the questions being about whether we'll have fans in the stands during the fall season. That's a great question, but we're only going to deal with current issues right now. For us to speculate, we don't have a crystal ball for what the future holds, but I do know this. If we all do what's expected of us over the next 8 weeks, we have a far greater chance of having fans in the stands than we do that if we don't. If we adhere to these guidelines, go out of our way to make sure we teach our students how to follow these and practice these, then I think we will have a much better chance of return to normal. Another question that we've received is, what about tryouts for the summer? As our members know, mandatory tryouts or mandatory workouts during the summer months are prohibited under the current set of bylaws. So there will be no tryouts. We've provided a period, an extra week for fall practice before the fall season, as well as for winter and spring sports. We provided additional periods for tryout time for winter sports 1 week prior to their season or during the first a 5-day period during the first 2 weeks after school begins. For spring sports, they may have 2. One during the first, following the winter sport period, during the second 2 weeks of the fall after school opens, and following their season, they will have another evaluation period. Now, during the summer, we understand that you may not be able to accommodate hundreds of kids, and especially to maintain social distancing or physical distancing. If your school needs to limit how many students are allowed to attend in the summer, that's acceptable. But you do have to provide an opportunity for students to try out during the allowable periods. Jamie, what's some other questions we have?
Are grades 7 through 12 allowed to participate in the activities that begin June 1? Are there age or grade restrictions?
All right. Okay, so Jamie asked a question about what grades are allowed. Grades 7 through 12 are allowed to participate. The age restrictions are the same restrictions as we have within our bylaws for participation. So we definitely will allow students 7 through 12 under the State Department of Education guidelines for those students to return.
Coach, another one. Does the state guidelines of canceled competitions or camps apply to cheerleading squads?
Now, cheerleading is not regulated by the Alabama High School Athletic Association. I would check with my local superintendent, as I do think the Alabama State Department of Education has recommended to superintendents there'll be no travel to any camps.
Coach, this question is for Dr. Robinson. Dr. Robinson, if wearing a face mask is encouraged at all times, what are the specific health risks, if any, for students to wear facial coverings?
There really shouldn't be any health risk to a student for wearing a facial covering. The only athletes that could possibly have problem would be some with some respiratory problems such as asthma. But again, they only wear their face coverings when they're not participating in drills, anything that's an aerobic activity. So just when they're standing around or in groups or spotting and these kind of things. But when they're actually exercising, they won't wear the mask.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Coach, a question about changing groups. For the multi-sport athlete, can they go from one sport on one day to another sport the next day? They go to multiple sports in one day?
Absolutely. You can go on different days, and Dr. Robinson, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you can go definitely on different days to different sports. But if you're a multi-sport athlete and you change groups within the same day, then you must make sure you practice all sanitary means by washing your hands, getting clean. We recommend that you change your clothes, wash your hands before you go to another sport.
That's correct.
All right, Coach, there's a question. We are at a small school and have a small staff. Can more than one adult be in the group? What are the restrictions with the 12-to-1 guidelines?
Well, the 12-to-1 guidelines is the Alabama State Department of Education guideline for supervision purposes. Bringing students back, they would like one adult, one certified teacher or coach to be with every 12 students, therefore to maintain their practicing the health protocols. We have no limit on the amount of students who can be involved as long as that grouping continues to practice social distancing or physical distancing at all times. The State Department of Education recommends an adult supervise every 12 kids, whereas they're following the protocols that are required.
Coach, who exactly is considered a non-essential person, and how do we keep them away?
Well, how do you keep non-essential individuals away from your school? I would talk to your principal and superintendent as you want to limit anyone from being in attendance. Remember, in contact tracing, it's very important you know who your kids are around. That's why changing groups is not recommended, that you stay within a group. So if someone did develop the symptoms of the virus, you'd be able to maybe quarantine a smaller amount of folks rather than bring outside people in where they may carry the virus and then you didn't know who had the virus, and you may have to quarantine more individuals. But our recommendation under best practices is to limit non-essential personnel. Just have your students, your coaches in there. We recommend you do not have anyone from outside come into your environment, because what you're trying to do is protect your student athletes at all times.
Coach, this may be a question Dr. Robinson can help us with, but it says, what if a player tests positive after we start?
Dr. Robinson?
Yes, sir. Once we identify somebody who has been tested positive, then the first thing to do is that individual will be put in isolation, which means he stays away from school and from the activities. Currently, for right now, somewhere between 10 and 14 days. The next thing we'll do is try to identify anybody that's been identified as a direct contact or close contact, which is 6 feet for 15 minutes. So anybody that would be in his workout group or these kind of things would be identified. And if they were a direct contact, then we recommend that they are quarantined for 14 days, which means that they would go home away from school at this time to try to limit the spread and monitor them for symptoms. And if they become to have no symptoms after 14 days, then they're allowed to return to all activities.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. And one thing I want to reiterate, that if someone were to develop COVID-19, contact your principal and superintendent immediately. Each school system has their own process that they will use to deal with these students. And so talk with your school administration, ask them that same question, and then they will advise you if someone does develop COVID-19. Jamie?
Coach, this is again along the same lines. What should you do if a player becomes sick during workouts? Do we send everyone home immediately?
Dr. Robinson, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. You don't have to send everyone home immediately, because you don't assume that the individual has got the COVID virus. So you would send that athlete home as soon as possible, and then would await for any testing that he might have done, and then would limit contact tracing after that.
One thing that I would also like to recommend, when you do your proactive pre-check, please make sure you check with your students to see if anyone has been sick, anyone's had a temperature, they've been around anyone that's had COVID-19. And I would restrict those people from working out until you know they're safe. Do not allow someone to work out that may, even though it may just be something as simple as sinus, I would be very cautious and not allow those folks to work out until you're sure it's not part of the virus.
All right, Coach, as of today, will fall competition start as planned with the current dates?
Okay, again, I'm not going to speculate on fall competition at this time. Everything is on as planned. We, again, will deal with current information that we have, because our information changes daily. You know, if the number of cases continue to go up in the state of Alabama, we might come under another Alabama Department of Public Health guideline that restricts us from being part of a school activity. So right now, for what we have, everything is on as planned, and I'm counting on each of our coaches across the state to practice these guidelines so we can have a normal fall activity and our cases continue to level out or even go down in our state.
Coach, is the taking of temperature and symptom screening mandatory, or will it be up to each school district?
It's up to each school district. Remember, what we have provided you are best practices. No one here at the High School Athletic Association is a doctor. We rely on the information from our medical advisory board, but it's up to each school system to establish their own guidelines as what they will do. Because remember, we're not just working out in athletic facilities. Students will be allowed back on campus. So whatever we do for one student, we should do with another. We provide these guidelines for our coaches, whereas if they need to restrict someone from participating in a workout that day, then they can do so.
Coach, along those same lines, are the schools supplying cleaning supplies for the school athletes once we begin on Monday to ensure proper cleaning takes place?
Well, I would check with my principal and I would check with my superintendent regarding cleaning supplies. And remember, we all don't have to start Monday. We can start when we have whatever we need to start. Local restrictions, some cities may have a more stringent restriction, whereas you will not be able to start Monday. And those restrictions would trump anything that would come out from any other agency. So if you're in Mobile or you're in Montgomery and they have more stringent restrictions, then you would have to follow those restrictions. We already have many schools in our state that aren't opening, or some that aren't opening Monday and are waiting to the 8th or the 15th to open.
All right, Coach, this is again for Dr. Robinson. Dr. Robinson, how should the water be administered? We have always used just a few water bottles that were shared during the course of a workout. How do you suggest we administer water?
We certainly recommend that every athlete has its own water bottle or own ability to have their own source of water. The recommendations of disconnecting water fountains is probably a good idea. Use of water cows and these kind of things are not recommended. So individual water bottles, each athlete has their own, and they take it home and clean it with them, and they can fill it up with a touchless system if they have it. But I think every athlete should have their own water bottle or supplied a bottle of water for practice.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I've had a couple of questions text to me, and I want to answer those. Can we hold an on-campus camp? Yes, you can hold an on-campus camp as long as it is just your students within your school system. Can you bring an outside person in as an instructor? Yes, but remember, that's a non-essential person, and I would check with my principal and superintendent prior to allowing them to attend, make sure it's okay with your local principal and superintendent. Another question I received is said, Coach, how do we keep kids from congregating in the parking lot? Well, I know how I'd keep them from congregating in the parking lot. I'd tell them they can't, and I'd make sure they didn't, and they don't need to be congregating in the parking lot. Josh Niblett brought up his ingress and egress. He would do it at different times, and we encourage you, when you bring students on campus, don't have a group exiting at the same time someone's entering. Put a 30-minute space in between those. Remember what I said earlier, nothing is going to be as normal as we've had in the past. But what you want to do is explain to your students why congregating in the parking lot is not important, why you can't call them up at the end of practice and get within the 6-foot radius, why we're doing what we're doing. And if we all do our part, and prayerfully we'll have our normal fall season. Jamie?
Yes, sir. Another question. What is required in cleaning equipment, including weights, benches, balls, etc.?
I'm not sure I understand what is required. You have to have a cleaning. Dr. Robinson, feel free to interject. You have to have a cleaning solution that you wipe down the equipment with when you're finished. Between each activity, no one should. Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that cleaning solution can be anything. It could be homemade, a homemade bleach solution. That there's ways to do that. It's 9 parts to 1, 9 parts water and 1 part of bleach. Or if you have the ability to have any kind of industrial sanitizer, you can use that in between with just paper towels or other towels.
Coach, again, this might be for Dr. Robinson, but with respect to heat illness management, ice baths, are these prohibited during this time, or can they still be used? And if so, what's the protocol on that?
Yeah, obviously, a life-threatening illness like heat stroke would definitely trump this. And so, if you had an athlete that was experiencing signs and symptoms of heat stroke, then we would absolutely want them to be put into an ice bath to be cooled immediately. So that those recommendations would definitely trump any of these. So yes, I would have my ice baths ready. The other thing to do is just use a ice chest with ice towels in it, and those ice towels can be laid across the athlete. That might be easier to do, but either one would still suffice.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. That's a great question. Great question.
Coach, another question may be difficult to answer, but these are best practices and guidelines. What are the repercussions of not following that, other than they're putting their student athletes in harm's way?
Well, we provide you these best practices and guidelines based on the recommendations from our physicians. Now, it's important, we feel like it's important that you follow them. The consequence will not be a penalty from the association, because we cannot govern every school in the state of Alabama what practices and protocols you follow. But one of the main consequences will be, if we don't follow them, that someone would, remember, we're not going to eliminate the risk. We're trying to mitigate the risk. And someone will, develop the virus. And that's what we're trying to do, is to prevent a student or an adult from developing this virus and having significant consequences because of it.
Coach, I think this is a great question for our parents out there that maybe you can help with. It says, with cases in Alabama continuing to rise and some inability to follow simple guidelines, how are youth sports safe at this point?
Well,
maybe the difference in youth sports and our guys.
Well, that is a really good question that y'all wanted to send me. I can see that right now. Well, I will say this regarding youth sports. Our control, our guidance is for teams 7 through 12. We think that the health and safety at the forefront of everything we're doing, taking a methodical, slow approach to returning to play. We encourage all of our sports to follow similar guidelines, follow Department of Public Health guidelines, but we are confident that our educated professionals, our role models, our coaches will adhere to these policies and provide our students the safest environment possible.
Coach, I'd like to interject that
go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
I was going to interject that the youth sports are also governed by the Coach Safely Act and the Coach Safely Foundation. is also has recommendations and guidelines out for youth sports that can be found on their website also.
Great point. Great point. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. We appreciate everyone being part of this program today. Dr. Robinson, Coach Niblett, Coach Miller, Coach Lee, thank you so much. Alvin Briggs, thank you very much for being part of this. We again look forward to being back with you with a new update as they become available. We'll definitely have another program on WOTM on July 7th. But thank y'all so much for being with us today. This will be available on our website. And please know you can call us, email us at any time with additional questions. God bless and have a great day.